Welcome to Monk's Moon Temple. Find a comfortable position, and allow your attention to settle here, in this moment. Feel the weight of your body, the rhythm of your breath. Notice the thoughts that come and go, like clouds passing through a still sky. We begin our journey not with a complex theory, but with a simple, honest look at the one who is listening, the sense of me that feels so real, so central, so unquestioned. There is a quiet ache at the heart of human experience. It's not always loud suffering. It's the subtle hum of dissatisfaction that follows even our joys. It's the feeling that something is missing, that we should be different, that life should be other than it is. In the profound psychological framework of Buddhism, this is not a personal failure. It is the natural result of a fundamental misunderstanding. The historical Buddha identified this core condition as dukkha, often translated as suffering, but more accurately, a pervasive sense of unease or unsatisfactoriness. The Buddha was not a moralist or a theologian. He was, in essence, the world's first radical psychologist. He diagnosed the human predicament with startling clarity: we suffer because we are clinging to an illusion. We build our entire identity, our fears, and our hopes around a mirage, the mirage of a separate, permanent, and solid self. This I that we believe we are is the central character in a story we never chose to write, yet we defend it with our lives. Let me share a story to illustrate this. Imagine a master puppeteer working behind a complex stage. He operates many marionettes, each with its own role, voice, and drama. There is a hero, a villain, a lover, a fool. The puppeteer is so skilled, so immersed in his art, that he forgets he is the puppeteer. He begins to believe he is the hero when that character is on stage. He feels the hero's triumphs and defeats in his own body. He then believes he is the villain, consumed by that character's rage. He shifts identities with each puppet, fully convinced each time that this is who he truly is. He is lost in the drama, suffering immensely, because he has mistaken the puppet for the puppeteer. Our situation is similar. We identify completely with the puppet of the moment. The I that is angry, the I that is successful, the I that is afraid. We don't see the hands, the strings, the broader awareness behind the show. The Buddha's great gift was to show us how to look behind the stage. If this idea of looking behind the drama of your own life resonates with you, I invite you to subscribe to Monk's Moon Temple. Here, we explore this inner landscape together, using timeless wisdom as a guide for modern living. Your support allows this space of inquiry to exist. Now, let's begin to look. The Buddha, through his own profound introspection, discovered that what we call the self is not a single, enduring thing. It is a coming together of 5 ever-changing processes. He called these the 5 aggregates, or khandhas. Think of them not as parts of a machine, but as 5 intertwined streams that create the river of your conscious experience. They are physical form, feeling tone, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. The feeling of being a permanent me is the hypnotic effect produced by these 5 streams flowing together. It is like the distinct image on a television screen, which is, in reality, just the rapid, coordinated dance of red, green, and blue light. There is no separate image apart from that dance. In the same way, there is no separate self apart from the dynamic interplay of these 5 aggregates. This is the heart of the Buddha's teaching of Anatta, no self. It is not annihilation. It is a correction of perception. This correction is the key to ending dukkha. All of our suffering is tied to the puppet we believe ourselves to be. We fear for its safety, crave praise for its attributes, and grieve its imagined losses. If the puppet is not who we truly are, then we are suffering from a case of profound mistaken identity. We are defending a shadow. Let's pause and bring this from concept to direct experience. For just the next minute. Notice the physical sensations present, the pressure of your seat, the texture of your clothing, the temperature of the air. This is the aggregate of form. Within these sensations, detect a simple, automatic feeling tone, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. This is feeling. Observe how the mind instantly labels the experience: chair, warmth, breath. This is perception. See what arises in response: a slight adjustment, a fleeting memory, a thought about what this means. This whirlwind of reaction, habit, and intention is mental formations. And underpinning it all, the simple, aware, knowing space in which all of this appears, that is consciousness. For these moments, don't try to change anything. Just watch these 5 streams. See them as natural events happening within awareness, not as awareness itself. The persistent sense of being a watcher may remain, but see if you can notice even that as a subtle thought, a quiet formation in the mind. In that space of simple, non-judgmental observation, a slight relaxation often occurs. The drama loses a degree of its urgency. This is the beginning of the turning around. This is the first step on a path that leads from identifying with the puppet to remembering the puppeteer, the vast, peaceful awareness that has been here all along. Let us continue our journey inward. We've touched upon the quiet ache of dukkha and glimpsed the Buddha's revolutionary insight. That this ache stems from clinging to an illusion of self, a puppet we mistake for the puppeteer. Now, we begin to examine the materials from which this puppet is constructed. We start with the most tangible, the most seemingly solid of the 5 aggregates, the aggregate of form, or rupa. When you think, I am, where does your mind first go? For most of us, it points directly to this physical body. This is me. These are my hands. My face. My aching knee. My tired eyes. We are born into this identification. Our entire society reflects it. We praise certain forms, fear the aging of others, and spend lifetimes trying to sculpt, adorn, protect, and satisfy this vessel we believe we are. The Buddha's teaching on form is a gentle but profound invitation to question this most basic assumption. Buddhism does not dismiss the body. It is not seen as a prison, but as one part of a flowing experience. The problem arises not from having a body, but from identifying with it, from saying, I am this. When we do that, our entire sense of well-being becomes tied to the fate of something that is, by its very nature, impermanent, fragile, and utterly beyond our ultimate control. This is a setup for inevitable suffering. Let me illustrate with a story. There was a master sculptor renowned for his lifelike statues. His greatest work was a magnificent marble figure of a warrior. He poured his soul into it, polishing it for years until it was flawless. He would sit with it for hours, whispering, "You are my masterpiece. You are my truth." Over time, in his mind, the line between himself and the statue blurred. He felt strong when he looked at its powerful shoulders, noble when he saw its carved face. One winter, a deep freeze cracked the marble from within. The sculptor discovered his warrior fractured, its arm lying on the studio floor. He fell to his knees, devastated. He felt he was broken. He wept not for the lost art, but as if he had lost a limb. A wise friend found him there and said softly, "The crack is in the marble. The grief is in the man. Which one are you?" This is our predicament. We are the sculptor, mistaking the statue for ourself. We believe our worth, our identity, our very existence is synonymous with the form. When it ages, sickens, or changes, as it inexorably must, we experience it as a personal catastrophe. The Buddha invites us to see, you are not the marble. You are the awareness that beholds both the statue's perfection and its cracks. The aggregate of form encompasses more than just your body. It includes your entire sensory world, everything seen, heard, smelled, tasted, and touched. The screen you're looking at, the sound of my voice, the scent in the air, all are part of the ever-changing stream of form. It is the raw data of existence. And we constantly grasp at it, trying to possess and control it, to make it define me and mine. My car, my house, my territory. We build a fortress of form and call it a self. Why can't this body be myself? The Buddha provided clear, logical reasons. First, consider lack of control. If this body were truly to me, my sovereign territory, I should be able to command it perfectly. I could order my heart to heal, my hair to regain its color, my cells to stop aging. But we cannot. The body follows its own biological laws. It gets sick when we don't want it to. It feels pain despite our protests. We have influence, we can feed it, exercise it, but not ultimate control. You are more like a caretaker of a complex ecosystem than its absolute owner. Second, and more fundamentally, is impermanence. Look at a photo of yourself as a child. That body is gone. Every cell has been replaced. The shape, the needs, the abilities are utterly different. If you were that body, then you died years ago. The feeling of being the same continuous person contradicts the physical evidence. The body is a process, not a thing. It is a river of cells, sensations, and energies. To claim I am this is to claim your identity is a river, constantly vanishing and reappearing. This creates a deep, subconscious anxiety, the fear of the river drying up, which we call the fear of death. Our culture teaches us to fight this impermanence with every cream, surgery, and diet. We are at war with form. The path of the Buddha is one of making peace through understanding. It involves shifting our relationship with the body from one of ownership to one of mindful inhabitation. It means feeling the breath not as my breath, but as breathing happening. Sensing an ache not as my pain, but as a sensation of pressure and heat arising in the field of awareness. This is not dissociation. It is a deeper, more intimate connection. When you stop fighting the body's nature, you can care for it with greater compassion, precisely because you see it as a temporary, precious guest in your awareness, not as the master of your fate. Let's practice this shift right now. Bring your attention to your right hand. Close your eyes if it helps. Feel the totality of sensation there. The subtle hum of aliveness. The temperature. The pulse. The pressure where it rests. Don't label it, my hand. Just explore the direct, sensory experience. See if you can notice the sensations themselves, tingling, warmth, solidity, as mere phenomena. Now, ask gently, is the feeling of hand actually in the sensations, or is it a thought, a perception, a mental image about the sensations? Where is the boundary of the hand? Does it stop at the skin, or does the feeling blend with the air around it? Is there a solid thing here, or is there just a cluster of ever-changing sense data, neatly packaged by your mind into an object called my hand? In that questioning, a space can open. The solidity of the form may soften. You are not denying the experience, you are looking at its true, fluid nature. You are the sculptor realizing he is holding the chisel, not being the marble. This de-identification with form is the first, massive step toward freedom. It loosens the tightest knot of our identity. It doesn't mean you neglect your health. Paradoxically, it means you care for this form more wisely, because you are no longer desperately trying to save a statue from the ravages of time. You are tending to a passing stream with kindness, because you are the kindness, not the stream. The anxiety about aging, the fear of sickness, the vanity over appearance, these begin to lose their power when form is seen for what it is. A temporary, conditioned, and incredibly intricate part of the dance of existence, but not the dancer. Now, let us move from the solid ground of form into a more subtle, yet more immediate, stream of your experience. Having seen how we mistakenly identify with the physical body, we turn to the very first mental reaction to that body, and to all of life. This is the second aggregate, the aggregate of feeling, or Vedana. If form is the raw data of experience, the light, the sound, the sensation, then feeling is the first and most basic translation of that data. It is not emotion. It is simpler, more fundamental. It is the instant, unconscious, and automatic tone given to every single moment of contact. Pleasant. Unpleasant. Neutral. The first sip of cool water on a hot day, pleasant. The sound of a sudden, loud alarm, unpleasant. The sight of a plane wall you pass every day, neutral. This happens constantly, at a speed far beyond conscious thought. Every sight, sound, thought, and memory carries this subtle, energetic charge. And this aggregate, this simple tonality, is a master puppeteer of what we call the self. The Buddha placed feeling immediately after form in his list for a crucial reason. It is the critical link between the world and our reaction to it. It is where impersonal experience begins to become personal. Where there is a sensation subtly shifts toward there is a sensation for me. This tiny, automatic judgment is the seed of craving and aversion, which are the engines of suffering. We live our lives in a relentless, often unconscious, pursuit of pleasant feelings and a desperate avoidance of unpleasant ones. We believe, deep down, that if we can just arrange the world, our relationships, our possessions, our achievements, to produce a continuous stream of pleasant Vedana, then we will be happy, and the I will be satisfied. But this is like trying to build a home on shifting sand. Feelings, by their nature, are impermanent. They arise due to specific, fleeting conditions, and they pass when those conditions change. The pleasure of the cool water is gone the moment the thirst is quenched. The irritation of the alarm fades when silence returns. To build your sense of well-being on these passing tones is to guarantee a life of anxiety and exhaustion. Let me share a story to illuminate this. Imagine a person standing by a wide, slow-moving river. Floating down the river are countless leaves. Some are beautiful, vibrant autumn leaves. Some are brown, soggy, and torn. Most are plain and green. The person has been given a net and told their job is to collect only the beautiful autumn leaves. They must catch each one, hold it, and also avoid letting any of the brown, unpleasant leaves touch them. They stand in the current, frantic. They lunge for a gorgeous red leaf, but as soon as they grasp it, it wilts and turns brown in their hand. They scream and throw it away, only to have to dodge another soggy leaf coming right at them. They are exhausted, drenched, and miserable, because the river never stops flowing, and the leaves never stop changing. This is our relationship with feeling. The river is the constant flow of experience through our 6 senses. The leaves are the feeling tones, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. We are the exhausted person, armed with the net of craving and aversion, trying to hold on to the pleasant and push away the unpleasant. We believe our happiness depends on this impossible task. The Buddha's insight is not to try to catch the leaves better, but to question why we are standing in the river with a net in the first place. What if we could step onto the bank and simply watch the leaves float by? Why can't this stream of feeling be myself? The reasons mirror those for form. Lack of control and impermanence. You cannot choose your next feeling tone. You don't decide to find a certain sound pleasant, it just happens. A memory arises, and with it, a wave of unpleasantness. You can't stop it by force of will. Feelings are conditioned reactions, based on past experiences, current biochemistry, and present circumstances. They happen to the mind-body process. They are not the commander. They are more like the weather in the sky of your awareness. Constantly changing, and utterly beyond your command. Furthermore, they are exquisitely impermanent. Watch closely. A pleasant feeling arises during a good conversation. For a moment, you are buoyant. Then a thought about a future worry crosses your mind, and the pleasant feeling evaporates, replaced by a low-grade anxiety. There is no permanent, happy self or sad self. There is just this flowing sequence of agreeable, disagreeable, and neutral sensations. If you were your feelings, then yourself would be dying and being reborn dozens of times each minute. The practice here, the heart of mindfulness in Buddhism, is to insert a moment of space between the feeling tone and our habitual reaction to it. This is how we begin to step out of the river. Let's try this together now. For the next minute, don't try to change anything. Just be a gentle scientist of your own experience. Notice the next sensation that arises. Perhaps it's the feeling of your clothing on your skin. Immediately, a tone will be present. Pleasant. Unpleasant. Neutral. Just note it silently, pleasant, neutral, unpleasant. Now, notice what the mind wants to do next. With a pleasant tone, it might want to grasp, to think, I like this, I want more. With an unpleasant one, it might want to contract, to think, I don't like this, make it stop. With a neutral one, it might want to ignore it, to seek something more stimulating. For now, don't follow any of these impulses. Just watch the 3-part sequence. 1. Sensation. 2. Feeling tone. 3. Impulse to react. See if you can simply pause after step 2. Let the pleasant feeling be pleasant without mentally grabbing it. Let the unpleasant feeling be unpleasant without mentally pushing it away. Let the neutral feeling be neutral without dismissing it. In that pause, something remarkable happens. The feeling is still there, but it is no longer yours. It is just a passing event in consciousness. You are not the leaf, You are the awareness of the sky through which the leaf is passing. The compulsion to manage the feeling relaxes. This is a moment of profound freedom. It is the undoing of the most basic level of craving and aversion. When we stop personalizing these feelings, their power to define us dissolves. A pain in the knee becomes a sensation of throbbing pressure, not my terrible pain. A moment of joy becomes a burst of warm energy, not my happiness that I'm afraid to lose. This is not stoicism or suppression. It is the opposite. It is allowing the full, raw experience without the filter of, for me. In that allowance, even unpleasant feelings can be experienced with a kind of peaceful intimacy, because you are no longer at war with them. This aggregate of feeling is where the battle for peace is truly won or lost. Every moment of mindfulness of Vedana is a stitch that mends the torn fabric of a reactive self. You are retraining the most ancient pathways of the mind. You are learning that you can feel without being had by the feeling. That you can experience the full spectrum of life's tones without losing your center, because your center is not in the feeling, but in the aware space that holds it. We have journeyed through the raw data of form and the initial, tonal reaction of feeling. Now, we arrive at the factory where our known world is assembled. This is the third aggregate, the aggregate of perception, or sana. If feeling is the ouch or the ah, perception is the mind that instantly shouts, thorn, or sunset. It is the labeling, recognizing, and interpreting function of the mind. It is what takes the buzzing, blooming confusion of raw experience and turns it into a world of recognizable things. This is the name-giving faculty. Light hitting the retina is not a tree. A pattern of sound waves is not my child's voice. Perception makes them so. It matches present sensory data against a vast library of memories and concepts. It is how you know a chair is for sitting, a face is friendly, and this sound is language. Without it, we would live in a chaotic, unnavigable soup of sensation. Perception is a brilliant, necessary tool for survival. But in the context of the sense of self, it becomes our chief jailer. The problem is not that we perceive. The problem, as the Buddha pointed out, is that we mistake our perceptions for reality itself. We forget that the label is not the thing. The map is not the territory. We become hypnotized by the names and stories perception creates, especially the most compelling story of all, the story of me. Let me share a story to illustrate the trap of perception. In a small village, there was a priceless gem known as the heart of the mountain. It was kept in a village square under a simple glass dome. For generations, the villagers would point to it with pride, saying, "There is our treasure, our identity, our heart." One day, a traveling geologist examined the gem and said, "This is beautiful, but it is not a gem. It is a rare, but perfectly ordinary, piece of polished quartz." The villagers were outraged. They refused to believe him. To them, it was the heart of the mountain. Its value and identity were unquestionable, woven into their perception. The geologist then lifted the dome, took the stone, and with a sharp tool, scratched a deep line onto its surface, something impossible to do to a true gemstone. A gasp went through the crowd. In that moment, their perception shattered. The thing was the same, but its meaning, the story they had built around it, collapsed. They were left not with a worthless stone, but with the raw, unstoried experience of it. Our sense of self is exactly like that gem. Perception takes the flowing aggregates, this body, form, these pleasant/unpleasant feelings, feeling, these thoughts, formations, this awareness, consciousness. And through a lightning-fast, habitual process, it labels the whole package, me. It creates a seemingly solid, coherent object out of a fluid process. It says, this collection is a self. It has a name, a history, a personality. And we believe it. We defend this labeled construct with our lives. This aggregate is where bias, prejudice, and our deepest conditioning live. We don't just see a person. We see a friend, a threat, a stranger. These perceptions instantly color our entire relationship with them, triggering chains of feeling and mental formations, liking, fearing, ignoring. The most profound perception of all is the perception of a subject, standing apart from a world of objects, that. Why can't this labeling function be the self? The Buddha's logic applies here too. First, lack of control. Can you choose your next perception? When you look at a cloud, can you stop your mind from perceiving it as a cloud? Can you look at a loved one and not perceive them as familiar? Perception is automatic, conditioned by a lifetime of learning. It happens to you. Second, impermanence and inconsistency. Your perceptions change. What you perceived as the love of my life at 20 might be perceived as a difficult chapter at 40. A food you perceived as disgusting as a child becomes delicious as an adult. The perception of who I am is in constant, if slow, flux. If you were your perceptions, then you would be as fickle and changing as they are. The path to freedom lies in developing what is called, in Buddhism, right view or wise perception. This is not about seeing new things, but about seeing the act of perception itself more clearly. It is about learning to see the label being placed, and in that seeing, creating a gap between the experience and our fused identification with the story about it. Let's practice this now. It's a subtle but powerful shift. Look at an object in your immediate environment. A cup, a plant, your own hand. Notice the first, instant perception, cup. Now, look again. See if you can sense the raw data before the label. See the colors, the shapes, the play of light and shadow. Then, notice the moment the mind slaps the label, cup, onto that data. See that the label is a thought, a piece of mental shorthand, appearing in awareness. The awareness itself is vast and silent. The label is a small, chattering event within it. Now, turn this awareness inward. Ask yourself, what is my current perception of me right now? Don't answer with concepts. Just feel the perception. It might be the listener, the seeker, the tired one. Observe this perception as you observe the cup. See it as a label floating in the space of awareness, a temporary mental formation, not the truth of what you are. This is dehypnotization. When you see the label being placed, you are no longer completely inside the label. You are the awareness that knows both the unlabeled experience and the process of labeling. You are the villager who, while still seeing the stone, now also sees the centuries of story projected onto it. That story loses its absolute power. This has immense practical implications for ending suffering. Most of our emotional pain is not in the raw event, but in our perception of the event. This is a disaster. This proves I'm a failure. This means I'm unloved. These are perceptions, interpretive stories. When we learn to see them as stories, as mental events, and not as ultimate reality, their emotional sting is often neutered. We can have the thought, I am a failure, and instead of becoming engulfed by it, we can note with gentle curiosity, the perception of failure has arisen. This creates a space for choice, for a different, wiser perception to eventually arise. The Buddha taught that at the deepest level, the perception of a self is the fundamental distortion. To see through it is to see things as they really are. This doesn't make the world meaningless. It makes it more vivid, more immediate, and far less personal. The cup is still useful. The loved one is still cherished. But they are no longer mistaken for permanent, solid entities that can either complete or destroy the equally illusory entity called me. They are seen as interactive, flowing processes, beautiful, poignant, and empty of a separate, frozen self. We now arrive at the workshop of the self. This is where the raw materials of form, the initial spark of feeling, and the labeled world of perception are shaped into what feels like deliberate action. This is the fourth aggregate, mental formations, or sankhara. This is the most dynamic, creative, and karmically potent of all the aggregates. It includes intention, will, desire, aversion, volition, habits, and all composite emotional and psychological states, courage, fear, love, doubt, resolve, laziness. If the mind were a kingdom, these would be its ministers, its army, its workers, all busily constructing the reality you live in. This is the aggregate we most deeply grasp as me. It feels like the engine room of our identity. I choose. I want. I intend. I have a unique personality composed of these traits. The sense of being a doer, a decider, is central to our experience of selfhood. We believe there is a captain at the helm of this ship called my life. The Buddha's examination of mental formations gently asks us to look for that captain, not on the bridge giving orders, but as another part of the ship's automatic functioning. Think of it this way, perception labels a piece of chocolate cake as cake and delicious, based on memory. Feeling adds a pleasant tone. Then, the aggregate of mental formations kicks in. It generates the intention to reach for the fork, the desire to taste it, the habit of eating sweets after dinner, and the conflict if you're also trying to diet. This entire swirl feels personal, willful, and yours. But where did the desire come from? Did you, as an independent self, generate it from nothing? Or did it arise conditioned by past experiences, memory, present biochemistry, hunger, sensory input, sight and smell, and cultural conditioning? Its formations all the way down. Let me illustrate with a story. Imagine a grand, intricate clock tower in the heart of a city. Its gears are immense, interlocking with perfect precision. On the hour, a series of levers and weights activate, causing mechanical figures to emerge and perform a show. A king nods, a blacksmith strikes his hammer, a dancer twirls. The townspeople gather and watch in awe. They point and say, "Look at the king decide to nod. See the blacksmith choose to strike. Watch the dancer will herself to twirl." They attribute intention, will, and selfhood to the mechanical figures. They do not see the single, heavy weight that dropped in the tower's core, setting off the entire, predetermined sequence. The figures have no independent agency, they are beautiful, complex expressions of a prior cause. Our mental life is often like this clockwork. A stimulus occurs, a memory, a sight, a word. The weight of our past conditioning, our karma, drops. And a predictable sequence of mental formations unfolds, a habitual thought, a familiar emotion, a knee-jerk desire. We then experience the thought or desire as it emerges into consciousness and believe, I am thinking this. I am desiring this. We are the townspeople, marveling at the dancer's will, not seeing the gears. Why can't this whirlwind of intention be the self? The Buddha's criteria hold. Lack of control. Can you choose your next desire? Can you, right now, decide to desperately crave a food you hate? Can you command a wave of anger to disappear the instant it arises? You can influence reactions, but the initial formation often appears unbidden. Impermanence, your personality traits, your wills, your desires are not constant. The brave person knows fear. The generous person has moments of selfishness. The you that wanted a corporate career at 25 is not the you that seeks simplicity at 50. These formations are weather patterns in the mind, not the sky itself. The crucial insight here is about volition. The Buddha taught that karma is volitional action, it is the energy of these mental formations. This is where we have leverage, where the path to freedom becomes practical. While we may not control the first arising of a formation, like a burst of irritation, we have a profound capacity regarding the second arrow, our intentional response to it. We can, through mindfulness, create a gap between the formation and the action it urges us to take. Let's practice with a common formation, worry. For the next minute, allow yourself to think of a mild, current concern. Not a crisis, just a nagging worry. Notice it arise. See it as a mental formation, a bundle of thoughts, images, and anxious energy. Now, instead of getting on the train of thought and going where it wants to take you, to future catastrophes, do something different. Simply label the process, worrying. Say it softly in your mind, worrying, worrying. Feel the energy of it in your body, perhaps a tightness in the chest or shoulders. Don't try to make it go away. Just observe this sankhara as you would observe a cloud. See it as a conditioned pattern kicking in, a familiar piece of the mind's clockwork. In that observation, a separation occurs. You are no longer being the worrier. You are aware of the worry happening. The formation loses its authority. It might still be there, but it is no longer running the show. You have, in that moment, stopped the karma of blind reaction. This space is where true choice, the choice of non-identification, resides. This is the heart of Buddhist mindfulness practice. This de-identification with mental formations is profoundly liberating. You are no longer tyrannized by your own moods, desires, and impulses. You see your personality as a collection of habits and conditioning, which can be skillfully worked with, rather than a fixed and fatal identity. You can have the thought, I am unlovable, and instead of believing it and sinking into depression, which would be feeding the formation, you can see it as a painful, old piece of mental clockwork that has been triggered. You can offer it compassion and let its energy pass through without building a story house on it. This is not passivity. It is the foundation of right action. Action that comes not from a reactive, egoic formation, I must prove myself, but from a clearer, more compassionate space of awareness. When you are not identified as the angry formation, you can still act firmly, but without hatred. When you are not identified as the needy formation, you can still love, but without clinging. The feeling of being the doer softens. You begin to experience life as a flow of doing happening, of intentions arising and passing, within a vast, intelligent awareness. You are less the frantic captain trying to steer through a storm, and more the aware space in which both the storm and the ship arise. You participate, you care, you act, but the crushing burden of being the sole author and controller of your life dissolves into a more graceful, responsive dance with reality. We have explored the physical form, the feeling tones, the world of labels, and the whirlwind of intentions. Now we come to the most subtle and often most misunderstood stream, the fifth aggregate, consciousness, or vaya. This is the bare awareness of an object. It is not a thing, but an event. It is the knowing itself. Eye consciousness arising with the seeing of form. Ear consciousness arising with the hearing of sound. Mind consciousness arising with the thinking of a thought. This is where many sincere seekers get caught. After deconstructing the body, the feelings, and the thoughts, there seems to be one thing left standing, this aware, knowing presence. It feels peaceful, unchanging, and separate from the chaos of the other aggregates. It is tempting to point to this and say, ah, this is the true self. The silent witness. The eternal awareness. The Buddha, with unerring precision, included even this in the aggregates. Why? Because this, too, is conditioned, dependent, and impermanent. To cling to consciousness as a permanent self is to grasp at the most refined and subtle shadow. Think of consciousness not as a spotlight operated by a separate self, but as lighting that automatically turns on when there is contact between a sense organ and a sense object. No eye and no visible form, no eye consciousness. No ear and no sound, no ear consciousness. It is a dependent arising. The consciousness that knows a beautiful symphony is different in cause, quality, and texture from the consciousness that knows a sharp pain. It changes with its object. It is not a monolithic, permanent light of the soul, shining from within. It is a momentary knowing, flickering into existence based on specific conditions. Let me share a story to illustrate this subtle trap. In an ancient library, there was a magnificent, flawless mirror. It was so clear that people believed it captured the very essence of whatever it reflected. A poet looked into it and said, "This mirror contains the soul of my beloved's face." A general looked and said, "It holds the spirit of my resolve." A grieving man looked and said, "It has absorbed my sorrow." They all believed the mirror possessed a permanent, capturing quality, that it took something of the object into itself. A wise librarian finally drew a curtain over the mirror. "In the darkness," he said, "the mirror is empty. It holds nothing. Its quality is simply to reflect, temporarily and without preference, whatever is placed before it. The beauty, the resolve, the sorrow, these were never in the mirror. They were the passing phenomena it reflected. To believe the mirror is those things, or that it possesses a permanent reflecting essence, is to mistake its function for its identity. Consciousness is that mirror. It is the capacity for knowing. It reflects the form, the feeling, the perception, the formation. But it is empty of any permanent content or a permanent, reflecting self. The poet, the general, and the grieving man are like us, attributing the qualities of the experience to the awareness itself, and then claiming that aware quality as our eternal, personal essence. The Buddha taught that consciousness is also marked by dependence and impermanence. It depends on the body, the sense organs, on external objects, and on the other mental aggregates. When you fall into dreamless sleep, under anesthesia, or in a faint, where is your witnessing consciousness? It ceases because the conditions for its arising are not present. It is not continuously shining. It is a series of discrete, conditioned events. If it were your true, permanent self, it would be uninterruptedly present, aware of all things at all times. It is not. The great trap for the meditator is to settle into a state of quiet, peaceful awareness and think, this is it. This peaceful watcher is my true nature. This is a subtle form of clinging to the aggregate of consciousness. It is a very refined, I am, thought. The peace is real, but it is still a conditioned state, dependent on the quieting of the other aggregates. It, too, will change. So what is the path forward? It is to be aware of awareness itself. To see consciousness as another natural phenomenon arising and passing within a vast, unconditioned space that you cannot objectify. This is a profound investigation. Let's engage in a brief exploration right now. Close your eyes for a moment. Listen to the sounds around you. Notice how hearing consciousness arises with each sound. There is not a stable, you, hearing, there is just the sound and the knowing of the sound happening simultaneously. Now, try to find the knower behind the knowing. Can you locate it? Is it in your head? Is it everywhere? The moment you try to find it, you create a thought about it, and you are now aware of that thought. The purported knower always slips away, leaving only the knowing of the present object. This is a clue. The sense of a separate witness is itself a perception, a mental formation appearing within consciousness. The Buddha's goal was not to destroy consciousness, but to see its true, empty nature so that we stop clinging to it as a refuge for a self. When this clinging ceases, something extraordinary happens. Consciousness is said to become unestablished or freed. It is like the mirror realizing it is empty space with a reflective capacity, not an entity that owns the reflections. It knows, but there is no one knowing. Experience becomes luminous and selfless. This is not a void. It is a vivid, compassionate, intelligent presence that is no longer claiming ownership of itself. This understanding resolves the puzzle of rebirth without a self. It is not a consciousness that transmigrates. It is the unbroken stream of dependent, momentary consciousness events, fueled by the karma of craving and clinging, the mental formations, that provides the continuity from life to life. Like one candle lighting another, no thing travels, but the flame continues. The pattern of conscious knowing re-establishes itself under new conditions. When craving and clinging cease, the fuel for this continuous ignition is withdrawn. This is nibbana, the unbinding of the conditioned process. For us now, the practical application is to include consciousness in our field of mindful observation. In meditation, when a state of calm, witnessing awareness arises, instead of identifying with it, note, awareness, peaceful, knowing. See it, too, as an impersonal phenomenon. This leads to the deepest levels of insight, where all phenomena, including consciousness, are seen as anatta, not self, empty, and free. This de-identification completes the dismantling of the puppet. You are not the form, the feeling, the perception, the formation, nor the consciousness. You are not the puppet, nor are you the puppeteer controlling it. What remains is the ineffable suchness of experience, unfolding without an owner, a mystery that can be lived but never possessed. It is a freedom so complete that it includes everything and grasps at nothing. Now, we bring the streams together. We have examined each of the 5 aggregates in isolation: the physicality of form, the reactive tone of feeling, the labeling of perception, the intentional drive of formations, and the knowing quality of consciousness. But in life, they do not appear separately. They arise together, interact, and reinforce one another in a dazzling, instantaneous dance. It is from this dynamic interplay, not from any one part, that the compelling, convincing illusion of a separate, continuous self is born. Understanding this interdependent origination of the sense of I is the final piece of the puzzle before we see the way out. Think of it like a whirlpool in a river. You can describe its components: the water, form, the downward pull of the current, feeling, the specific shape of the rocks that guide it, perception, the rotational energy, formations. And the fact that it is observable, consciousness. But the whirlpool itself, that distinct, seemingly independent entity that appears to have its own identity and power, is an emergent property. It is not any one component. It is the pattern created by all of them working together. The whirlpool believes it is a real, separate thing, fighting to maintain its existence against the flow of the river. It does not see that it is the river, in a temporary, dynamic pattern. The sense of I is that whirlpool. The aggregates are the components. We are hypnotized by the pattern. Let me share an original story to illustrate this synthesis. In a grand hall, 5 master musicians, each a virtuoso of a single instrument, are told to play only their own part, with no conductor and no sheet music for the others. The violinist, form, plays a steady, physical rhythm. The cellist, feeling, responds with a low, melancholic tone. The flautist, perception, adds a bright, recognizable melody. The percussionist, formations, jumps in with complex, driving rhythms. The pianist, consciousness, provides a harmonic structure that holds it all together. At first, it is chaos. But as they play, listening and reacting to each other, something miraculous happens. A beautiful, coherent, and seemingly composed piece of music emerges from the interplay. A listener walks in, hears the music, and exclaims, "What a magnificent orchestra!" Who is the composer? The musicians look around, confused. There is no composer. There is only the pattern of interaction. Yet, the music feels intentional, unified, and alive with its own identity. We are that listener, and we are also the musicians. We hear and feel the unified symphony of our experience, the pain, the joy, the thoughts, the awareness, and we immediately infer a central composer, a conductor, a self. We say, "I am in pain. I am thinking." But look closely. Is there a composer, or is there just the conditioned, interdependent playing of the 5 instruments? The feeling of being the composer is the most convincing illusion of all. This is how the process works in real time. 1. Form, a sensation arises, tightness in the chest. 2. Feeling, it is tagged as unpleasant. 3. Perception. It is labeled anxiety or fear based on memory. 4. Formations. In response, a whirl of mental activity arises. The desire for it to stop, stories about why it's there, plans to escape it. 5. Consciousness. All of this is known, which seems to unify the experience. And then, a metaperception arises, a final, almost invisible stitch. Perception looks at this entire bundle, the tight sensation, the unpleasant tone, the label, my anxiety, the desperate thoughts to fix it, and the awareness of it all, and it slaps on the master label, me. This is happening to me. This is my anxiety. The bundle is tied together with the string of self-reference. The whirlpool forms. The symphony is attributed to a conductor called I. The suffering of dukkha is not in any single note. The tight sensation is just sensation. The unpleasant tone is just a signal. The thoughts are just thoughts. Suffering is the clinging to the entire pattern as me and mine. It is the whirlpool's frantic effort to maintain its pattern against the river's flow. It is the belief that this pattern must be protected, satisfied, and perpetuated. The Buddha's path to liberation is the methodical unweaving of this pattern through mindful observation. It is not about destroying the aggregates, but about seeing their true, interdependent, and selfless nature. As we practice, we begin to experience the aggregates not as a fused lump of me, but as discrete, impersonal processes flowing in relationship. Let's practice this unweaving right now with a present experience. Notice your current state. Perhaps there is a feeling of waiting, or interest, or fatigue. First, isolate form. Feel the pure physical sensations, the weight, the temperature, the points of contact. See them as mere events in the sensory field. Then, notice the feeling tone associated with these sensations. Pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. See this, too, as a fleeting, impersonal signal. Observe the perceptions at work. The mind naming, fatigue, or interest. See the label as a label, a useful but provisional shorthand, not the truth. Watch the mental formations that stir. A slight impatience for this exercise to end. A curiosity about what's next. See these intentions and reactions as conditioned energies arising and passing, like breezes. And be aware of consciousness itself, this knowing space in which all of this is appearing. See it as the open sky, not as a personal possessor of the clouds. Now, try to find the you that owns this process. Is it in the sensations? The tone? The label? The reactions? The knowing? Or is you the assumption of ownership that glues them together? In the gap of that questioning, the glue often softens. The symphony plays, but the phantom composer disappears. There is just the music. The whirlpool is seen as water. When this seeing becomes direct and sustained insight, clinging, upadana, loses its grip. If there is no substantial me to protect, what is there to cling to? The energy that was tied up in maintaining the illusion is released. This is not a nihilistic nothingness. It is a profound peace and freedom. The aggregates continue, the body feels, the mind thinks, the heart loves, but they are no longer claimed by a fictional owner. Life is lived fully, responsively, and compassionately, but without the background anxiety of managing a fragile self. This is the taste of liberation the Buddha promised. The end of the war with reality. We have journeyed together through the deconstruction of the self, seeing how the five aggregates intertwine to create the hauntingly real illusion of I. We've peered into the nature of form, feeling, perception, formations, and consciousness, and discovered that what we are is far more profound, and far less solid, than we ever imagined. This final part is not an ending, but a homecoming. It is about the peace that awaits when the search for a self finally rests. This peace has a name in the language of the Buddha, nibbana, or nirvana. It is the most misunderstood word in all of Buddhism. It is not a heavenly paradise, not a state of blank nothingness, and not the annihilation of a person who never existed in the first place. Nibbana is best understood as unbinding. It is the cessation of the fever of craving and clinging. It is the extinguishing of the fires of greed, hatred, and delusion, the very forces that fuel the sense of a separate self. When these fires cool, what remains is not a void, but the natural, luminous clarity of a mind that is no longer at war with itself or the world. Imagine a clenched fist held tightly for a lifetime. The muscles are locked, the knuckles are white, there is constant tension and pain. The fist believes this is its only possible state, its very identity. Nibbana is not the destruction of the hand. It is the gentle, merciful relaxation of the fist. The fingers unfurl. The tension dissolves. The hand is still a hand, it can now touch, hold, and feel with unimaginable sensitivity and freedom. It was always capable of this, but it had forgotten how to let go. Awakening is this letting go on the most fundamental level. It is the radical understanding, felt in every cell of your being, that there is no separate, permanent you to protect or satisfy. This understanding is not a bleak realization, it is an immense relief. The burdens of self-concern, self-image, and self-preservation lift. Life is no longer a project about me. Does this mean you become passive, uncaring, or indifferent? The opposite is true. When the fiction of separation collapses, compassion becomes the most natural response in the world. Just as your right hand instinctively moves to soothe a burn on your left, an awakened heart responds to the suffering of others without barriers. Action flows from wisdom and empathy, not from the ego's need for validation or control. You engage with the world more fully, but you are not easily wounded by it, because there is no fragile self at the center to be wounded. This path does not require you to leave your life. It asks you to enter it more completely, but with a different perspective. You still have a name, a job, relationships, and responsibilities. These are the conventions of the world, and the Buddha had no problem using them. But you hold them lightly, like tools, not like definitions of your soul. The joy and sorrow of life are experienced with a poignant, open awareness that does not cling to the joy or resist the sorrow. You live in the world, but you are not of the world's delusion. How does one move toward this? It is the consistent, gentle practice of mindfulness, of watching the five aggregates with compassionate curiosity. It is seeing the anger without being the anger, feeling the fear without becoming the fear, enjoying the pleasure without claiming it as mine. Each moment of non-identification is a stitch pulled from the fabric of the illusion. It is not a dramatic, once-and-for-all event for most, but a gradual unfolding, a deepening into truth. The Buddha was a human being. He walked, ate, slept, and felt physical pain. He was not a god. He was someone who looked so deeply into his own nature that he saw the truth of all nature. And he said, unequivocally, that what he did, you can do. The potential for this awakening is present in the very structure of your awareness. It is not something to acquire, but something to stop obscuring. So as we conclude, let this not be an end, but a beginning of your own sincere looking. When you feel stress, unease, or suffering, see it as the Buddha's invitation. Instead of asking, how do I fix this feeling in me, ask, what is this? Where is the me in this? Turn the light of awareness back upon itself. In that gentle, persistent inquiry, the phantom self begins to lose its substance, and the boundless peace that has always been here starts to shine through. Thank you for sharing this journey at Monk's Moon Temple. This exploration is a living path. If you wish to continue walking it with supportive guidance, please subscribe. Together, we can keep turning toward the freedom that is our true nature. May you be happy. May you be peaceful. May you be free.